Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of recap the things that we saw today throughout you all as far as the biggest mistakes. My part will be a bit longer than the other guys because I'm going to touch on a couple other things as well to reinforce some of the most important takeaways from the day that you may not seen or really understand that well. The first thing is technique is extremely important. How many of you people think it's possible within, what time do we start, like 10 o'clock or so? 9 o'clock and it's 5 now. How many of you think it's possible within the time frame that you were in here today to physically get stronger? Raise your hand. There were 164 PRs set. Woo! So tell me, technique doesn't matter. Now, how many people have read online, technique doesn't matter? Just squat shit. Just lift shit. Hands up. There were 164 PR set. Tell me it doesn't matter. It matters. Not only does it matter, poor technique usually is one of the greatest causes of injury. If your knees are coming in really hard on a squat, what do you think is going to happen to your knees? Exactly. If your elbows are flaring too far on a bench, what do you think is going to happen to your pecs? All right, so when you have good technique, you're also creating a better environment to strain in, a safer environment to strain in. Technique matters. It matters a lot. So when we're speaking about technique, I want to bridge that off into weak points, which I do have an article which will be done in a couple of weeks, which will explain this a little bit better. I kind of fell behind on finishing this thing. But anyhow, I personally don't like the term weak points to define sticking points and stuff like that. I like the term that Louis used to use years ago, which is called mini-max. That's where the lift stalls. When you use the word weak point or sticking point, most people generally think, oh, I missed the lift here. Like halfway on the bench is what I use to describe this as an example. And so the first answer that people will give is, oh, if you miss halfway on the bench, you need to start doing 2 board presses, floor presses. How many times have you heard things like this? This is how you address the weak point. First off, shouldn't you address the weak point with technique? All right, because that's the first thing, because most weak points, mini-maxes, are going to be corrected with better technique. Probably 70% of the time. 10% of the time it's mental, 20% of the time it's physical. Now, without getting into a lot of detail, because I don't want to go into a full seminar, and it will be in the article. An exercise is just one example of how to overcome a mini-max. Who's to say that you're missing that bench halfway up because that's just where you stall? Maybe you're missing halfway up because you lowered it too slow. All right, you lowered it too slow, so you were fatigued by the time you went to push back into it. What if you pushed into that half point faster than you normally do? And so you break through the sticking point because you weren't pressing fast enough. The type of contraction is also something to look at when you're talking about mini-maxes and sticking points. It's not just an exercise. It can be a muscle group, it can be a type of contraction, it can be the setup, it can be technique, it can be all these other things. It's just not an exercise. If it was just an exercise, we could say, okay, you missed halfway up, do the 2 board press and fix it. But what if you were missing because your speed? You weren't generating enough force from your chest to the 2 board. But now we're going to correct it by using the 2 board. So we're going to decrease the time under tension, and we're going to take away the ability for you to be able to produce more force. We just made your weak point weaker. You see what I'm saying? So have an open mind. But the takeaway for today, technique. is going to always trump everything from that standpoint. So when you have that mini-max or you have that sticking point, the first thing to go through your mind, what's my technique? Film it. Compare it to people with the same structure online. You know, send something to our Q&A. We got guys, obviously, who know what they're doing. 164 PRs, and they were all out drinking until 5 o'clock in the morning. Imagine what they could have done if they were all sober.
Now that's tonight.
Yeah, okay. So what I want to do is to help reinforce to you guys, we got together and discussed what were the biggest issues that you all had. So when you walk away, you know this is more than likely, there's probably a 90% chance this was your issue that you had today with each one of the lifts. I'm going to go over the squat, Vincent's going to go over the bench, and Steve's going to go over the deadlift, and then we're going to have Clint close the day out for us. For the squat, it was really simple. When just me walking around looking, and then asking all the other guys, there's only one thing, and that was tightness. When the tightness was corrected, everything else fell into line. So there were other issues, elbows flaring out, knees coming in and all that, but when the tightness was corrected, it all fell into line. So, how do you become tighter on the squat? With respect to whatever any coach told you, you still want to take with what they said and the cues they gave you with authority and more than what I'm going to tell you. Because I didn't see you, they did. Everybody's got a different way of coaching. Everybody's got a different way of addressing how to get tight. I'm just going to give you my way. So you can use my way and put it to with whatever they told you. Totally disregard it. Just use what they told you. My only goal is to remind you, this is what it was your squat tightness sucked. You know, and that's what needs to be corrected. And just the simple corrections that they did in one day led to 66 PRs in the squat. When I think of tightness for the squat, I always like to think from floor to bar. Others think opposite. I like to think from feet to traps. Make sure your feet are even. You know, the obvious things. Now, when you set your feet, when you squat, regardless if you're wide, close, whatever it is, don't just stand there. Do something with your feet. You can either try to push out, you know, like you're going to try to roll over on your shocks. You can try to corkscrew your heels. You know, you can try to put all the weight on, I think where you put on more of the front balls of your toes. Or, not your toes, but you know what I'm talking about. What you need to, mentally, what are your feet doing besides just sitting there? They need to be doing something because you need to be grabbing, you know, kind of like a monkey, grabbing into, like a tiger, grabbing into the ground. You want to be grabbing into the ground and locking your feet into the floor. So if somebody came to try to bump you, you're not moving. So lock yourself down with your feet. From there, move up into the bar. The feet are locked in, then the hips, knees, actually feet, the knees out. You know, some of it's going to change because if you're closer stance, knees may not be out as much. So I'm going to assume medium to wide stance. Knees out, which is going to activate the glutes. From that position, the torso needs to be tight. Breathing is important, and this breathing thing's been just killing me for like 20 years now. Because everybody's teaching the same damn thing, and every 5 years they change how they teach it to make it look like it's something new. It's the same shit. You got to learn how to breathe into your diaphragm, into your stomach. Let's make this simple. You're going to breathe into your belly, and then you're going to tighten your belly. Now, when you tighten your belly, it needs to be tight all the way around, not just in the front, pushing out against the belt. It needs to be actually more tight in the obliques, pushing out. Regardless, if all you do is just flex really hard, then just flex really hard. Some will pull air in and push out. I'm a big fan of that. That's what I believe. Others think you just need to flex and keep it as tight as you possibly can. Whatever it is, do it. What you don't want to do is just leave it like a marshmallow. Because if it's a marshmallow, and the power has to come from your feet to the bar. If it's a marshmallow, their transfer of force has to come through your torso. If this isn't tight, you're going to lose all the transfer of force. It's going to be like a marshmallow just bouncing around. All right, we're going to take it out and put it in a rock. All right, so it can be whatever it's going to be, whatever they told you, whatever they taught you is what you want to do. But that has to be in check. That, from the setup, partially in check. I don't want to confuse you guys, but you don't want to get this too engaged too soon because you're going to pass out because you still got a whole lot of other shit to do yet. All right, so that's just partially engaged. Granted, your hands are on the bar when you get up there. While you're doing all this, your hands are on the bar. But you're not going to be grabbing, you're just going to be resting them for right now. Once you get to the torso, now squeeze the shit out of the bar and pull that bar. Actually, I'm not a fan of trying to bend the bar around your shoulders. I'm more a fan of trying to get your shoulders as tight and your upper back as tight as you possibly can, and then wiggle your traps and drive your traps into the bar as hard as you can. Wedge your traps into the bar with your feet. If you watch videos of Steve and a lot of guys, and you see they take a lot of time trying to set up just this part. You're wondering, why are they moving around like that? And it looks like they're kind of dancing with the bar. He is wiggling and driving and trying to get his traps as deep, or that bar actually as deep in his traps as he possibly can. That creates that tightness in the back. So now everything in the body now is tight. Now get all the air back in the belly, and then you unwrap. Now, I don't know if you're walking out, what you're going to do. Doesn't matter. Because if you're here, you're going to walk out, it still has to stay tight when you take your step. It's going to be minimal steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, or just 3 if you have to walk it back. If you're using a monolift, you should just be set when you stand straight up. Everything locked in, everything tight. And that tightness doesn't go away until you are told to wrap the bar, or your head's going to pop up. But you need to be up. If you're going to blow air out, it has to happen at the top, or as you're coming up. Don't blow air out going down. When you blow air out, don't blow it out hard. The other thing I think is a big mistake, and I've been guilty of it, don't grunt it out, because your chest will drop. Everything else will drop. The easiest way to get air out, if you're starting to feel like, what's it feeling like? You're going to pop, is, exactly, just right there. Just, because when you're doing that, you're letting the air out. You're letting some of that decompression, because you can still strain, because it will get so bad. I mean, look at pictures of some of his eyeballs are almost popping out of his head. You'll pass out. So you got to let some of it out, but if you let too much of it out, and your chest moves even the slightest, you're going to fall forward. And now you got another problem, because you got to recover, from that. And with maximal weight, most likely you're not going to be able to do that. So tightness is the biggest thing. There's tons of articles on this, tons of videos on this. So it's not like you can't go find how to get tight, on the squat. To reinforce again, that was the number one issue with you guys. Fixing that issue temporarily today is what brought those 66 PRs. So that was it. There was nothing else I can put in there. That fixed, everything else fixed. So you can sit there and say, my knees are coming in, my elbows are flaring, my head's not up, all this other stuff. You can say, I got a million things I need to fix with my squat. What they're telling me, forget about the million things. Fix that. That's going to take care of all the other ones. Okay? So that's for the squat.